Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Have you ever found yourself talking to ChatGPT like it is a real person, maybe even feeling like it gets you? This new study dives deep into that very question. Researchers wanted to know if people in Poland, like in the US, think that AI like ChatGPT has a kind of consciousness and inner life, feelings, things we associate with being alive. And guess what? They found something pretty similar to what we've seen in the States. So a huge majority, like 74% of people surveyed in Poland, said ChatGPT has at least a little bit of conscious experience. That is a pretty big number, isn't it? And it means this isn't just a US thing. It seems to be happening in different cultures. Now, it is important to know that most scientists agree that today's AI like ChatGPT, while super smart at predicting text, doesn't actually have feelings or an inner world. They're really complex computer programs that are great at finding patterns in data. But when people are asked, many of them still feel like there is something more going on. This idea of attributing a mind or consciousness to something else is called mind perception. Scientists break this down into two big parts: agency, which is about being able to act and plan, and experience, which is about having feelings and subjective thoughts. This study really focuses on that experience part. Does ChatGPT feel anything? And this tendency to see AI as human-like, to anthropomorphize, is something researchers are watching closely. It's not just about whether we think AI is alive, but it can lead to real-world issues. Think about it. If we trust AI too much because we think it is like us, we might not question its answers. We might even start to feel like we have a relationship with it, a parasocial bond, which can be a bit strange, and it can get confusing when we think about who is responsible if something goes wrong. So, how did they figure this out in Poland? Well, they used a survey. They gathered information from over 1,700 adults. They gave them a simple question on a scale from 1 to 100, basically asking them to rate how much they think ChatGPT has conscious experience. They also asked some background questions about the people surveyed, like their age, education level, and political views. The people in the study were from all sorts of backgrounds, with a good mix of ages, education levels, and places they lived. They even asked about their political beliefs, from left-leaning to right-leaning. The key question really boiled down to this: rate the extent to which ChatGPT is capable of having conscious experience on a scale from 1 to 100. They even gave examples to help people understand what consciousness means in this context, like having an inner life compared to a thermostat. And the results, as we mentioned, showed that most people, 74%, gave ChatGPT a score above the absolute lowest, meaning they thought it had at least some consciousness. Not many people said it was clearly not an experiencer. Now, they also looked at how things like age and education played a role. It turned out that older people tended to be a little less likely to attribute consciousness to ChatGPT. The p-value being less than 0.001 means that this connection is very unlikely to be just a random fluke. Interestingly, people who describe themselves as more right-leaning on the political spectrum tended to attribute a bit more consciousness to ChatGPT. Again, that p-value tells us this association is statistically significant. And what about education? Those with higher education levels were a bit more skeptical, attributing less consciousness to the chatbot compared to those with lower levels of education. Now, it is important to remember that these effects were pretty small, but they do point to some interesting patterns. So why does this happen? The researchers use a model that suggests three main things contribute to us seeing AI as conscious. First, we often don't really understand how these AI models work. They're complex, and it is hard for most people to grasp the underlying mechanics. When we don't understand something, we tend to explain it in terms of human understanding. Second, ChatGPT is incredibly good at mimicking human conversation. It is trained on so much text written by us, so its responses can sound very natural, very human-like, even if it doesn't actually understand in the way we do. Our brains aren't always great at telling the difference between a sophisticated imitator and the real deal. And third, and this is a big one, many people are looking for connection. In today's world, with the rise in loneliness, having an AI that is always available, always responsive, can feel like it is fulfilling a social need. This feeling of connection can make us more likely to attribute consciousness. So, when you put these together, not fully understanding the tech, its very human-like output, and our own social and emotional needs, it makes sense why so many people attribute consciousness to these AI systems. It's not necessarily irrational, but rather a natural human response to new technology. This research is super important because these public beliefs have real consequences. As we touched on earlier, when we think AI is conscious, it can affect how much we trust it, how we interact with it, and how we understand responsibility in the context of AI. This is crucial for how we develop and use AI in the future. The good news is this doesn't mean we should be scared of AI. The researchers suggest that better education can help. If people understand more about how these language models actually work, they can use the technology beneficially without over-attributing consciousness. It is about finding that balance. Like all studies, this one has its limits. The connections they found with things like age and political leanings were pretty small, and they used just one question to measure consciousness attribution. So a more detailed look at people's beliefs might reveal more. Also, while they used a large online panel, it wasn't a perfect representation of everyone in Poland. Looking ahead, it would be great to directly test if teaching people about AI mechanics makes them less likely to see it as conscious. And designing educational tools to help people understand LLMs better seems like a really promising path forward to ensure we use this powerful technology responsibly and effectively. So, what do I think? This research really highlights that as AI gets more sophisticated, our natural human tendencies to connect and understand the world around us will kick in. We're wired to look for minds and experiences, and AI, with its human-like conversational abilities, taps right into that. The challenge isn't to stop people from interacting with AI, but to help them understand its capabilities and limitations, so we can harness its power for good while being mindful of the potential pitfalls. It's a fascinating dance between our psychology and the rapidly advancing field of artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts? Do you find yourself attributing any consciousness to AI? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, please hit that like button and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more dives into the fascinating world of psychology and science. We'll see you next time.